All right, hey folks, today we're talking about lifting amnesia. What is it? But before we get onto that, thanks for making it onto my channel. If you have anything to say about this video, please put it down below. If you would like to work with me with your own, on your own physique and strength improvements, then there is a link in the description. So let's crack on. Now, I've been training for about 22 years, okay, altogether. Now, you can be sure that that wasn't just a rosy 22 years of continual progress. It wasn't. There were certain years where I got injured. There were certain years where I was just like super busy with other things. There were ups and downs. Some years were great, some years weren't so great. Such is life when you do something for that long. Now, a lot of times, well, not occasionally, I give myself some credit here. Occasionally, there would be times where I would look back and go, you know what? That was a really good year of training. What did I do during that year of training? I did this, like X, Y, and Z, whatever I did. Okay, maybe there was a certain type of setup where I cut for a while, I bulked for a while, maybe I just recompositioned, the whole main gain thing. Maybe I had a certain routine, whatever it was, right? Maybe I was doing something with my diet, whatever it was, right? Perhaps like I didn't let myself get too out of shape or something like that. And then I look back and go, wow, that was a really good year. I made a ton of progress on that year. And then I think to myself, why aren't I doing that now? Right, have you guys ever done that? You guys have done that? You look back and go, wow, things were going great then. And it was in my control. Perhaps there was something else I was doing. And I kind of read about this new technique, some guy on YouTube, or read about this on this website, this magazine, whatever. And I tried to do something else and it was just a disaster. Yeah? And we kind of forget. We forget sometimes about how good things were. We get that whole grass is greener, all that kind of stuff. So we switch over to something new. We realize, okay, it's not that great. And then we think, God, why? 6 months down the line, we're like, why did I change? So you read something and it sounds like an amazingly good idea. I saw a ton of people do this back in the day with Westside training. And again, not to rag on Westside training, but there was this one guy. This was back in like 2001, I think it was. So he was doing Westside training. He was really strong. He was like my age back in the day. He was like 19 years old. And we were both training. We had our logs on this forum. Like back in the day, that's what people would do. They would just log their lifts on a forum. You do a post in black and white. So this is what I did today. And so he was about my age. So we used to talk a lot. And I remember him. He's a really nice guy. He's this Polish guy. So we used to talk back and forth. And he started doing Westside training. And he was stronger than me. So I started with my own form of training, which was like a 4-day kind of split, more of a traditional power building thing. And anyway, slowly over the course of the next year or so, this is when I hit upon my really good run and my strength just kind of skyrocketed. And I saw him stagnate. And it was really weird because like I had him as this really strong guy who was stronger than me and all that kind of stuff, and he was doing well. 6 months down the line, he retested his lifts because he hadn't really tested, with his conjugate method, the way that he did it. He would only come back to the main lift like every 6 months. So he tested it and he was getting weaker. It was like, what the hell's going on? All the while, I'm just like skyrocketing forward. I'm smashing it. And so in his mind, he probably felt a little bit of that. He didn't use Westside to get as strong as he was, but he was trying to use it to get stronger. And again, this is not a rag on Westside. Like I like Westside. I've done a video on that. I'll link it if you like. I do like Westside training, but his own interpretation of that, he did it wrong. And in the end, I actually ended up surpassing him. I got stronger than him, and it was visible for me to demonstrate my progress, and it was faster than him. And when we tested, I was constantly getting stronger than him. Now, we went kind of back and forth over the years, and I lost touch with him, but it was just an interesting example because he hadn't used Westside. He thought it was a great idea. He read about it. He thought it was fantastic. Turned out the reality just didn't match. And I think that happens quite a lot with people. It certainly happens with me. It's happened with me in the past. Okay, this routine sounds great. Sounds like a good idea. Then a year later, man, why did I stop doing that? And oftentimes it's not the routine. It's just the focus and application of maybe the dietary factors or the intensity you put into the gym. It's the application of the routine rather than the actual routine. Again, Westside's fine, conjugate is fine. It's the application of that sometimes, and it's the little details. And they're hard to track if we don't specifically write them down or what we're doing. And to give you some other examples, I know a guy who's got a pretty decent physique, and he's a PT. Okay, now all he does with his clients is he makes them do like high intensity interval training sessions. That's all he does. They're group classes. You know, when they run around, they run from one end to another, do burpees, all that kind of stuff. That's all he does with them. Okay. Every now and again in the class, they'll do like bodyweight squats to failure, something like that. But he built his physique in the weight room, lifting heavy weights, right? He built his physique, getting strong on deadlifts and squats and benches. And he has this weird sort of cognitive dissonance when it comes to people he trains. So he trains people with high intensity interval training, and then he gets mad at them when they don't get results. So it's really weird. But he doesn't realize that's what he does. And I think that's also a form of lifting amnesia. What he's done with himself to get him to this point where he's fit and big and lean and shredded and all that kind of stuff, it's not what he does with his clients. And also with his clients, like I think he'll encourage them to have like certain meal plans, but he doesn't have a meal plan. He tracks his macros and calories. So he has a weird sense of cognitive dissonance with what he does with himself and then what he does with his clients. Potentially, that's maybe a business decision. Like the ease of how he's able to deliver classes in a group makes more sense for him money-wise. But then perhaps that's a little bit disingenuous. Perhaps that's a little bit misleading. But in any case, it's a form of lifting amnesia, I think. So there's that. So what I wanted to just touch on today is how do you fix that? You're going through life, things are going well, okay? Or perhaps things aren't going so well with your training. How do you fix that? How do you actually know and hold on to what works? So some notes for you guys on here. So firstly, I think the first most important thing is to objectively quantify what works. Now, this is where you've got to track and you've got to measure some outcomes. And you know me, guys, at this stage, I'm not all about tracking the method. Like, you don't always have to track your diet, but you've got to track the outcomes. You've got to track what actually happened. So whatever your diet model, you've got to track what happened to your body measurements, your body shape, your size, your weight, all that kind of stuff. You've got to track something. And in the same with the gym, you've got to track some form of outcome, like how your physique looks, perhaps pictures, something like that. You've got to track that. Ideally, you've got to track some sort of parameters which are relevant to what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to lose body fat, pictures are highly relevant. If you're trying to get stronger in the gym, you've got to have maybe 2 or 3 markers of progression per cycle to let you know whether you're progressing or not. And notice how this is objective, not subjective. It's not just like, well, I feel it's good, it works for me. People say that, yeah, but it works for me. Like, did it though? Did it really? And you check back with them a year later and they look exactly the same. And they're like, so what are you doing now? It's like, oh, I'm doing this routine now. Yeah, it works for me. Like, didn't you say that about that thing a year ago? Yeah, I did. But trust me, this time it's going to work for me. Or it does work for me. Oh, I believe you. And 10 years down the line, 2 decades down the line, they look exactly the same. Hey, it works for me. Like, yeah, does it really though? So objectively, you got to quantify what actually works. So take measurements, take some sort of measure of progress which doesn't depend on how you feel on a particular day. Okay, and this is why the scales works, body measurement works, calipers work. If you have access to a DEXA scan works, and then for strength development, your numbers in the lifts that you're trying to improve work as well. All that works. So write that down: pictures, methods, and actual tangible results, not just how you feel. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you should feel good. You should feel good about your method, but how you feel can change day to day just on emotions. All right. So quantify objectively what works and then write it down so you can evaluate it at a later stage and you can come back to it so you know what works. All right, folks, I am pretty much done with this video. I think that's helpful. Bottom line is, if you've been lifting for any length of time, you're going to forget stuff which worked. Okay, it's gonna happen. Like, very few people have just a meteoric rise to the top. You're going to forget what actually worked. Try and firstly objectively quantify what works and what doesn't. Okay, and then write it down clearly and use it as a log for your progress over the next 10, 20 years. Okay, part of being a coach, part of actually formalizing a lot of my concepts in articles that I write and people that I coach, videos that I do, is concrete, laying down my thoughts. Now, that's good and bad, because occasionally you can change your mind, but it's useful because you have a catalog of what you feel has worked at the time. That's useful. So you guys should do that all the same. You don't have to have a YouTube channel, but you should at least quantify what works and write it down. I'm going to call it there. So as I say, if you would like to work with me, there's a link in the description. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Take care, folks. Alrighty.